Welcome. Well, we understand and we know that this is always the hardest session of the day, being the last session of the day, but we thought we'd make it a little bit more interesting and interactive and have more of a conversation rather than sort of a Q&A on stage. So to get us started, and maybe, Greg, I might go straight to you, since you are the owner's representative on stage. What are hotels doing right in F&B, or are hotels doing F&B right at the moment?
Well, I think hotel operators have a lot of work to do in order to satisfy the demands of a growing market, especially here in Dubai, and guests with a lot of very specific tastes. So I think that they probably are able to produce a profitable all-day dining that services the package requirements. They're able to do that very well with guests staying on half-board packages and the like. What they don't do well, in my opinion, is the specialty restaurants. So it's the ability to compete with the big names in the marketplace that aren't run by hotel operators, that are run by real pure restaurant operators. And that's a space that I think they probably have forgotten, because in other markets it's not as prevalent as it is here in Dubai. But here especially, they've got a lot of work to do.
Okay, Ramzy, Greg points out the all-day dining, but isn't the all-day dining dead from an ROI perspective? How does a hotel generate a really decent ROI on an all-day dining restaurant when, as we know in the past, they're really designed just as big breakfast rooms?
That is the history of it.
Yeah.
And certainly some of the discussions that we've been having as an independent operator is addressing exactly that. It's a big space normally to be able to cope with breakfast. You're getting newer hotels these days that are struggling because they have a small breakfast area that can't cope with the number of keys. That's become the challenge these days with some of the properties we're also seeing of where to offer that breakfast. But some of the discussions we're having on that is, how do you make lunch and especially dinner interesting there? Because a lot of the brands being launched, and Hilton and a few others are doing a great job at saying, okay, let's make it more interactive, let's make it more fun. We don't want to call it the all-day dining. We want to, first of all, give it a different name. So have the customer feel it's their space, they can come there. It becomes more like an environment for them to be there all day. Yeah. Whether it's a cafe type concept or, come there, use the internet, have a few meetings, etc. But at the same time, with something like that, one of the things we're doing is, there's a project we're doing in Doha, where we're opening one of our brands, actually taking over the all-day dining. And that becomes a very themed restaurant. Breakfast will likely be served in that themed area. And then the rest of the day, that converts to the franchise that we're putting in. So from a hotel guest experience, they don't know any different. They just see this venue, they have breakfast there, and then it changes slightly in the setup. And then the rest of the day, lunch, evening, it's able to generate that ROI. It's not that easy to do. It happens, as we saw in the previous presentations, Jamie's is doing that in London. And I think more and more of that will happen to ensure that you get a better return.
Abdul-Kader, the all-day dining, the traditional all-day dining space is a decent piece of real estate. What are your thoughts with regards to how that can be maximized from an ROI perspective?
Again, I do agree with Ramzy. It is a very difficult proposition. It's just the whole design, the whole concept needs to be approached differently. And I think that's where hotel operators also look at it as they're different in the way they approach restaurants as opposed to independent or high street concept developers or operators. You need to create the identity, and I think that's very difficult when you have the same guest coming in for breakfast and you have the whole buffet set up, and then he's going to go for his meetings, come back in the afternoon. You really have to work really hard to change the perception for the space. It's the same thing with any restaurants. Once you walk in, you have that perception, it's an all-day dining. Coming back in the evening, you really have to work very hard, be it the lighting, be it the uniforms, be it the menu offering. It needs a lot of work for you to attract different clientele, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, coming back to you, with regards to the specialty restaurants, as you mentioned before, are you purely looking at straight leases on these? Do you look at a potential to do a joint venture? Is there what we term in the industry now a manchise opportunity there, where you can put a management contract against a franchise agreement? So what are the areas that you're looking at the moment?
Well, specifically on hotels, they've got such a long life to them. And when, as an owner, we partner with a major hotel company for their brand to run our hotel, it's a huge commitment. And we take especially in the hotel segment, we take the commitment with any third-party operators much the same. So the time and effort that's spent in an operator search process for the hotel should also be spent for finding the right fit in terms of the actual tenant in a third-party lease space, their concept, how it will work operationally with the hotel. So I think that's probably something that the owner market tends to forget a lot, is that you really do need to spend time and make sure that you have the right partner, because and if it were just a retail shop or any not necessarily connected with a hotel, but just another space where another restaurant opens up, we all know how hard the F&B market is, and the turnover of an F&B outlet in some cases can be quite high. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. That's probably a worst case scenario in third-party leasing in a hotel, is turnover of
outlets.
Yeah.
I mean, probably also the number of outlets you have in every hotel, especially in Dubai. Every hotel has about 3, 5, 7, 8 outlets. And how do you manage so many different brands and attract so many people from outside the hotel to fill up these restaurants? And I think that's a very difficult one.
Look, I think also to that point, it's the fact of the lease strategy. It's kind of used to be in the owner's mindset. Oh, I'm going to get my 1.75 million dirham a year, and that's it. And then they see these operators come in and they're making 14, 15 million top line, and they're going, hang on a second, I'm missing out on it. I want to own that asset. So is it about rethinking that strategy, Ramzy, where it's actually the owners want to own the asset going forward, and then they're supposed to bring in reputable operators to come and run it for them, rather than just giving the space away on a 5 by 5 year lease?
Well, the 1.75 million was probably about 1985.
Come on, it's a small space. Yeah.
It must be really small, about the size of this stage. No, I think what you're seeing is there's that issue of, do you lease, do you not lease?
Yep.
And if you lease, you lose control of the space. There's a lot to be said for Aboudi just said here, which is actually these days, less is more. Don't have 8 or 10. Have 3 or 4, focus on them, get them super busy. As humans, you don't want to be in a space that's empty. You want to be somewhere that's cozy and that's full and that has a vibe.
Yep.
I want to take that point a step further and say 3 and 4. I mean, right size your F&B requirement for your hotel, where it's located. If you're not located in an area that needs 3 or 4 hotels, if you're not, in that vibe destination, don't do it. I mean, there's no shame at all in not having 3 or 4 specialty restaurants.
And going back to your question about, the franchise aspect of it and what Greg was referring to earlier, it is one thing that seems an ideal solution. Like, let's just get a franchise in. There's no point in getting a franchise if the same mentality is going to be approached to run the franchise as was running that restaurant before. And that's the fault from 2 parties. That would be the hotel's fault trying to do it the same way because of the owner pressure of change it and make it more profitable, and the brand's fault for not providing enough support. So the point of just having a franchise doesn't achieve what you need it to achieve. I think it has to be, if it's going to be a pure franchise, way more involvement from the brand. Yep. And the other model you referred to, where you get the brand more incentivized, is the manchise. Yes, it's a franchise, and then you get them also to be involved in managing it, so that there's also that element of top line, bottom line, sort of incentive fee structure for them as well. And in fact, from a hotel model, because hotels have everything centralized purchasing, there's no rent, there's no storage. They've got significantly lower costs than an independent operator like us when you look at a venue. If you get an independent operator that can come in with a brand and work with you to increase the revenue, so independents generally can do a significantly higher revenue than a hotel can on its own, and can historically. You then add the significantly low cost of a hotel, so you have a higher revenue, a lower cost base. By definition, you have a significantly larger profit available for distribution. You'll eat some of that for the franchise fee, the management fees, if you have that from the brand, as well as the hotel operator management fees. But you still have the owner having a much bigger profit than they would have had otherwise. And when you run some numbers, you'll also, for the most part, see that profit is actually quite a bit higher than him actually leasing it out to a third party.
The third party.
Now, a lot of things have to work right for that model to work, but that's the theory of it, and we are actually seeing a few of those, and we've signed a few of those in this market.
Abdul, sort of taking it back again, the focus on ROI seems to be a main bent from an owner's perspective. I know Greg's sitting there slightly nodding his head at me going, yes, when do I get my money back? But when you're forecasting and budgeting and you're looking at how much to invest in the fit out, how much to invest in your staffing, I mean, numbers are numbers. The ROI, isn't that something that we should consider after year one? Because if you say to your owner, yep, you'll get your money back in 2.78 years, and then your year one figures are nothing like what you forecasted, because obviously it's a forecast, it's a prediction. Isn't it better to say, right, we're going to give you your ROI figure at the end of 12 months?
I think that'll be a hard sell. I think you have to be realistic from the onset. You have to be realistic in terms of the cost that's going to go into doing the fit out, the recruitment, setting up your outlet. Also, I think you need to be realistic in the concept, or believe in the concept, believe that's going to work. Absolutely, there's no point in saying return on investment in 1 or 2 years. Some places do have return on investment in 2 years, great, but I wouldn't say that's the norm. Yeah. It's better to set the expectations on 3 years, 3.5 years, and if you get your money back in 2 years, superb, everyone's happy. But again, it goes back to the main point, is there's no point going spending 10, 20 million dirhams on a restaurant inside the hotel, which is probably going to generate 10,000 dirhams a day, because your ROI has gone up to 20 years. So you really have to believe in it and see where you're going to spend your money and get the most return.
How important, I'm going to stick with you on this one, how important in getting it right and getting your restaurant right is staying authentic to your original vision for what you're going to execute?
You have to believe in it, and you have to stick to the vision. I strongly believe that a successful restaurant is down to the food and the service, without taking away from the design aspect of it.
Yeah, where's Sarah Jane? It's got nothing to do with design. We've just
without taking away, I said.
Nothing to do with design.
And people will come to a restaurant, they're going to love the space. The space needs to be feel comfortable, inviting. But I think if the food isn't good and the service doesn't follow, you can't be running a successful outlet.
So, Greg, back to you. I mean, we're talking about sort of the software element now, which is that human capital, that human resource piece. How do you view it? When you're looking at your hotel operators coming in, and I'll come to the two of you on this in a second. When you view what's the best way to describe it? A front office attendant. The purchase has already been done. The guest has already made the purchase decision to come and stay in that hotel. And the front office assistant or attendant is literally facilitating that check-in process, getting them on board and getting them off to their room. Whereas a waiter or a floor staff, they're 100% responsible for the sale. So the ability to make that purchasing decision is something that is directly occurring within that space. Should both of those people be paid 1,100 dirham a month as a base pay?
No, I think that's low on all accounts at that particular rate. But you're asking if there should be a greater expenditure on personnel for greater revenue opportunities, and I think that answer would probably be yes. I think you need to pay more to get better people. Regarding the front office, I mean, we now expect as owners for them to upsell at the front desk as well. So that's something they are expected to do more at the front desk. And, we rely on hotel operators to have the infrastructure in place to have incentives to make sure that the people at the table do upsell their guests and make sure that everybody gets coffee and everybody gets dessert and everybody leaves with a smile. And the part that I want to touch on, Abudi, that you said about, it's got to be good food and, it's got to be good service. My heart starts racing when I think about a third-party operator in my hotel who's not offering good food and not offering good service. If it was managed by my hotel general manager, I've got something to say about it. The only thing I can do when it's a third-party operator is just talk. I have no action.
And the guests think they're yours.
Absolutely, they sure do think absolutely think it's part of the hotel. So, to think that, it's compartmentalized, from a hotel owner's perspective, and we try to sell it to the hotel operators this way, is that you don't have to worry about this outlet anymore. You don't worry about it. You just compartmentalize your mind and focus on things that you can do to make money elsewhere. But at the end of the day, they still have to handle guest complaints about that restaurant. They still have to take that perception that it's still theirs.
On that point, though, I think it's critical because what you're doing then is if that's the case, the hotel operator says, I've got nothing to do with that. And I've seen this happen in hotels here in Dubai. You'll walk into a hotel, you'll literally walk past a third-party outsourced restaurant with the director of sales and marketing of that property, and they won't even acknowledge it. They won't even acknowledge that it's part of the, because they say, no, come and have a look at our restaurant over here. So there's a danger then of actually creating a negative set of operating circumstances if you approach it from that philosophy, yeah?
It's about human relationships. That's what it comes down to.
Yep.
If that independent outlet has a good relationship with the team on the ground, and it isn't just that corporate said they're going in and you've upset the entire management team there, and generally you upset them, why? It's simple. Because you've reduced their potential earning with KPI aspects. So they're going to push people to their restaurant. If you work together and you have a good interaction, that goes away. And we've seen that. But just on another point, I mean, on the payment stuff, and don't take this the wrong way, but you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, right? So most people understand that. So you should be paying a higher salary. That's why your consulting fees are expensive, because you're good. Right? So,
I can hear you from here.
no, but on a serious point,
Yeah.
I mean, it's true, you get what you pay for. It's like going somewhere expecting a great meal and wanting to pay nothing. You're not going to get a great experience.
No, I think we all agree that you'd rather have a restaurant with 100 covers and 4 really good waiters on the floor rather than a restaurant with 100 covers and 8 really average waiters on the floor, I think, from an operating perspective.
But something Abdul mentioned earlier is, and you asked him about the return profile. It obviously depends whether you're running a nightclub or what type of profile of restaurant. But I think that the message with an owner, and it's very different if it's an independent outlet or an owner. It's about patience. So yes, you shouldn't expect a return in 6 to 12 months, not even a year or 2. Right? But the reality is you've got to be patient and true to the concept, but also be brave enough to realize if it's a total disaster and you need to make a change. And that's that fine line of where do you fall? It's working, I just don't quite have enough coming through. In a hotel structure, the costs are a lot lower. You can stomach that by not having great revenue and still be a relatively okay operation breaking even. That is an element that being in a hotel and being run within the hotel cost structure helps.
Comment?
Well, I mean, we operate completely differently because we're outside the hotels, so it's quite different.
Yeah.
And the returns need to be there, and we don't belong part of big properties where sort of if you have one outlet not functioning, you have 2 or 3 working, then it's fine. But each P&L has to stand up on its own feet. And in this current market, we are facing some difficulties with some concepts, and some of them we are reviewing. Some we're considering closing, some maybe putting some more cash injection into it to try and get through this period.
Absolutely. Greg, I'm going to come back to you. You put your fortune-telling glasses on now, thinking 15 years into the future, 10, 15 years into the future.
I'll still be handsome.
You'll still be handsome. I don't know where to go with that. I've lost my train of thought. You see, now I've lost my train of thought. No, I've got it back. Will hotels be running F&B in 15 years from now?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't think there will come a point in time where it is completely carved out and the only focus of hotel operators will be rooms?
No, I don't. I think there could be more spin-off into, this is the X food and beverage brand of, Jumeirah would be a perfect example of that, where they spin off a part of their business. But I still think that the hotel operators will always operate F&B because there will still be, the mid-tier hotels that only need to offer breakfast, and really that's something that can be done as cheaply and as efficiently with a hotel operator. And there will always be hotel owners that put all the faith and all the trust in the world into their hotel operator because there's just hundreds of years of trust behind,
Brand X.
We're speaking to a couple of new hotel operators coming on, and it's the 4-star sort of level hotels. And because they only have one all-day dining, they're actually looking at completely outsourcing the full F&B service. And they want to focus on the rooms 100%.
Yeah.
So I've got a fun story about that. We had a hotel in New York City that had one restaurant, and it was operated by a third-party operator, and it was I think it was leased initially, and then that fell away, but still people considered it the hotel outlet, and there were issues with standards and issues with service, and you're always going to come into that question. That will always be there, and once that peeks into the mind, I think you'll leave an opportunity for having the hotel operator continue to stay there and have control over their outlet.
Fair enough. Because we've got about 5 minutes to go, I think. Yeah, give or take. We'll keep 3 minutes maybe. So I want to throw one at you now, which is with regards to, obviously, overall revenues of hotels. Because my impression and my opinion is that with the right concept, you can pretty much monetize any piece of space within a hotel. That's my belief. So we were talking before about you don't need to have 3, 4, 5 outlets, and potentially that's correct. But also, aren't there areas that we don't focus on at the moment in hotel build and hotel construction that have potential for F&B revenue generation? I mean, under staircases, luggage closets, basements that can be converted into a party venue on a weekend. I don't know, I'm just throwing ideas out. But do we need to break the barriers of going, I need a speciality and I need a bar and I need an all-day dining and start thinking a little bit more creatively on monetizing those spaces?
I think you have to segment that into what's the category of the hotel you're looking at. Is it 5, 4, 3? And then the area where you are. Mm-hmm. So there are brands, Rove's doing an excellent job right now of the way they've approached the market and the way they're providing the food and beverage to their guests. It's pick up what you want, it's okay, it's like a convenience store, and you just eat it. Traditionally, that's a no-no. You have to be served properly, but it depends on the category of the hotel. It also depends where you are. So location is very specific. If you're in the middle of a business district, your offering will likely be very different than if you're on a beach.
Resort, yeah.
So, that there is an element of, yes, you should try and maximize, but it's not necessarily all about F&B. There are other things you could do that attracts the guests, other facilities for them.
I could see this working more in the West as opposed to here.
Okay.
I think because of the natural footfall, whereas here, pretty much everything is a destination.
True.
Whereas you're on the high street, London, Paris, Barcelona, wherever you are, and as a hotel, you could take a hole in a wall and turn it into a small, pub or sandwich place, and you could attract people from the high street. But I can't see people here now driving, getting in their cars and going into a small outlet or a small one-off.
I'll challenge you on that because if you look at the local demographic, a lot of that is what they do, is they jump into their four-wheel drives and they drive down to the back streets of Jumeirah, stop off at their local place to go and have something to eat and come back.
Not a hotel.
Not a hotel, okay, fair enough. Doesn't mean that we couldn't put it into a hotel, though.
It's going to take some work.
It is.
but monetizing different things, aspects in a hotel, Mark, the GM at Fairmont on the Palm, has done an excellent job there, because what they've done is run, great brand, tons of rooms, they run a very, very high occupancy. They created a sort of lobby cafe that wasn't there before. They had other extra space, so they brought Stu and Williams some photography and gave them a space. They put an extra rental car thing. They're looking at, third-party lease in one of the venues. Okay, that happens to be us, but that's a different discussion. But they're being quite creative in terms of putting different things under the stairs, and literally under the stairs as you go outside is a retail area that they've put in. So that's why I say it's not just F&B. I think F&B is one solution to that, but it's about having different aspects to interest the guests that are there, and by definition, then monetize, whether it's run themselves or lease.
Or leased out.
I think that one of the most successful outlets in Dubai Mall is Ben Cookies under the staircase.
Ben's Cookies, exactly. Yeah. The other one is Parker's, which is hidden away from the,
exactly.
Yeah, that's a great space.
That's a great example.
They've done a great job.
Guys, I think we'll call it there, and I'll see if there are any questions from, thank you, all you diehards who have stayed to the end of the presentation. I'm very impressed. If there are any questions from the audience, yes, we have one over here.
The microphone slows, you get 30 more seconds.
Okay, so we are hotel owners, and quite a few of them, all mostly in Dubai, and therefore my question is directed toward the Dubai scenario. F&B in Dubai, I would say, is a very sophisticated market now. As hotel owners, the concern we have, and with almost 40 F&B outlets now, is it a trend that concepts now have a reduced life to last? Because as owners, if you're going to go and spend, I don't know, a few $1 million on a concept, and we are told that any case, this is not going to last more than 3, 5, 6, 7 years. Ooh. We are a little worried about that. Yeah. And if that is happening, I mean, if that is a given, if that is happening, how important is it for a customer who walks into an F&B outlet from the decor of the place versus the quality of the food versus the service quality? I mean, these are questions that we start talking about.
That's a good point.
I think definitely the market is quite difficult now in terms of the F&B or number of restaurants. You could call it almost an oversupply or the market correcting itself. I think for a restaurant to be successful, you need pretty much everything. Yes, I said food, service, design, everything, location. Social media is key now. I'm not a big fan of social media, but unfortunately, it's word of mouth, it's social media. That's how you get the word out there about the new outlets. But the lifespan of an outlet currently in this market, yes, probably shorter than usual, again, because of the number of competition and the number of outlets out there. Again, it goes back to you don't want to be spending millions of dollars because in 2-3 years, if the concept is old or outdated, your return on investment is gone. So it's really about really spending the right amount, knowing that you need to get it back in 2 to 3 years. Beyond 3 years, it does become difficult, I think.
Well, we should have comfort in knowing that an Italian restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, a Lebanese restaurant.
I mean, these are the best. These are the sort
will
of
always,
most,
Indian, they'll always be successful here. So when in doubt, go with the
And
comfort.
again, I think it depends on the caliber of hotel that you are. If it's a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, it's very different. Concepts can have long lives, even in this market, but it comes down to quality. And if the guests feel comfortable, all of us, you eat with your eyes. It's about your sensory experiences. That's what we as humans want. Your tongue, which is 6 inches long, if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't care what food you ate in reality, because you couldn't taste anything. You may eat grass. But the point is, when you look at the restaurants, what you see, what you hear, what you feel is the most important as a guest. Now, if it's a 3 or 2-star brand, that guest may just not care. All they care about is the price. They want clean room, they want in and out, and they don't care about any of that. So again, I think you have to be a little careful what brand, what star or category that you're looking at of hotel, and then address it that way. But definitely don't spend too much. If you spend too much, you're in this hole you can never get out of. And that's the key, is make sure upfront costs are controlled, that it's a sensible CapEx going in.
I'm just going to cap that as well by saying that I think that concepts now, across the board, need to be designed to be organically uplifted, so that it's not a staid, what's a good example? It's not Fuddruckers. So when you walk into a Fuddruckers, it's a Fuddruckers, nothing changes about it. The way we design, F&B, especially into hotels now, is so that over the course of its lifespan, and that may be somewhere between 5 and 10 years, ideally 15 if we could do it, but over the course of its lifespan, you organically modify it to suit the market. So the ethos and the authenticity and the soul of the concept remains true, but the way you deliver it and the way you execute it within the space can alter over that period of time.
And obviously, if a concept does well and people love it, it will stay forever. I mean, you see that, Rotana on Sheikh Zayed Road has, their Teatro concept on the 3rd floor. It's one of the longest standing restaurants around.
Best performing.
It's very consistent.
Yeah.
Not huge amounts of capex. They just redid the kitchen. Gets its regular customers. It's not as busy as it was 15 years ago, when you couldn't get a table for love or money, but it's delivering great returns still.
Use the seafood market at Le Méridien at the airport as well.
That's another great example.
23 years now it's been going. So once again, it's all about consistency. Any other questions from the floor? Thank you all very much for your attention this afternoon. I'd like to thank the panelists and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.